Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Round the Lens Roundtable Discussions. Joining me this week is my guest, Bruce Byers. Bruce, give the audience a bit about your credentials.
All right, so born in Reno, Nevada. I think my father won me on a crap table. It was a minister and up in Lovelock, Nevada. Wonderful. If you ever visit the state of Nevada, go north. It's a wonderful desert,
Yeah.
beautiful for photography and everything else. And he moved back to the East Coast, and I ended up um, having a mentor in high school from the Ford Foundation. He was a journalist and I think I had been shooting for 10 years before high school, but um, he was my stepping stone into where I am today. Went to RIT in Rochester for Bachelor's of Fine Art, down in New York City in 75, and kind of put my black and white photography to the side and went off into color, advertising, fashion, travel, and advertising. And then in the 90s, got back into my black and white and got into kind of my journalist years of documenting medical missions around the world. And then I got into places like Cuba and Nepal and Bhutan, China, all over Asia and Europe, and I pulled together Camera Odysseys. So cameraodysseys.com is my workshop. So I've actually been doing Cuba for the last 15 years. Been down there about 35 times. So we're going down there in February for a wonderful trip, and it's just a great way of I've always found of opening up another photographer's eyes to be watched by somebody, and that person allowing me to say, "Hey, why don't you try this? Hey, why don't you try that?" And it's a wonderful thing to do and to camaraderie. And so I'm and I've just in Catskill, New York, south of Albany, New York, which is state capital in New York. I just put together about 2 years ago a gallery, Hill Street Gallery in Catskill, New York. I always said it, visual art is art you can see. So now I get to put it on the wall instead of in the boxes. So that's me.
Awesome, awesome. You've been a very frequent guest and contributor to our shows, so we've always appreciated you coming on to talk about what's going on in your world. And, one of the big things you do, obviously, are your excursions to Cuba. And we've talked about that before, but I think it bears kind of another mention, especially in this day and climate, with everything going on in the world and the things that, President Trump continually says and spouts off about with regard to his willingness and desire to essentially take what he wants within the international space. So let's start there. You've got a trip going on in February, right? And you plan to go to Cuba. What do you see as sort of the hurdles that might come into play in getting yourself down there this time as opposed to previous times? And kind of how has the sort of climate changed since you started doing the trips to now?
Well, when I started doing the trips was in 2010. I went down there with a friend and found that it was an incredible place to photograph. And, everybody says, "Oh, I've been to Cuba," or "Oh, I want to go to Cuba." Aren't the cars great down there? Well, the cars are one minuscule part of Cuba. And yes,
Yeah.
I photographed the cars, but boy, is there so much more to photograph and the friends that I developed. So as it went along, it would ebb and flow with the amount of tourists that would come down and the amount of uh, embargo that the United States would use it. Rubio and his routine of hating Cuba, he was want to make it tight, and then it would loosen up, then tight again. So what's happened over the last 5 years is they've put the screws to European countries So they're not able to help out Cuba. Hey, you send a container of chicken to Cuba and we're going to screw you. Oh, okay, then I'm not going to. Instead of just sending the chicken to Cuba and nothing happens as with our tariffs, nothing happens. Cuba gets their food and you know, so the embargo is really a thing Republicans happy in Miami. The Cuban Americans happy in Miami. But there's a lot of Cuban Americans in Miami that are the older guys that were kicked out. They're kind of dying off, and the younger kids are going, "How come I can't go back to Cuba?
Yeah.
Why leave Cuba alone?" So but it might be a little selfish, but now when I go to Cuba, like I was saying 2 years ago, I went all the way across Cuba and they're having a gas problem because of
Mm,
the oil.
sure.
And as they refine gas, they refine the oil there to create their gas. And it took us 11 gas stations to get 4 liters, not gallons, 4 liters of gasoline.
Yeesh.
I literally coasted for 10 miles into a town because I was going on fumes. But when you get into these towns, there are no Chinese tourist buses. There are no um, droves of tourists walking around. So you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and walk the street, and there's the Cuban farmer going by in his horse and buggy
Mm,
with no buses, no tourists to be in your way, and that's the true Cuba. That's what Cuba is. They don't all have cars. They don't all have Mercedes and everything. They have a donkey and a cart that brings their food to the market. But it's not it, but when it's not mixed in with the tourist buses, you get the real Cuba. There's over the last, I would say 4 years, or actually about 3 years ago, I always go down there with a Cuban artist. He's always comes in from Santiago, wherever I am. He was always with me. So we visit as many artists as we can find. And I just produced a book called The Art and Soul of the Cuban Artist. You can find it on my website at brucebyers.com. But it's 70 artists that I would trade photography for their art. I would give them pieces of paper and they would give me art back and I would put it into the book. And this was 70 artists out of about 150 that I know down there. So that was absolutely wonderful to be able to walk into all these different studios. And you can do that in the United States or in Europe. Get out of here. What do you want to do? Yeah, buy my art or get out of here. But the other thing is though, with all the clients that I've had, we probably purchased very conservatively $60,000 worth of Cuban art on our trips. I've gone into art studios where we walk out with $2,500 worth of fantastic art. And of course, the artist is like going, holy, this is fantastic. He just made his day. But the people are walking out with absolutely beautiful art. So
yeah.
it is a good thing and it's a bad thing. For photography wise, it's good. For my big problem though is if this whole thing, if Rubio and Trump decide to go chase after Cuba, then do we end up with they're going to protest like crazy. I mean, it's going to be mayhem down there. As an American, as a photographer, do you get involved in that? Are you going to be pegged by the Cuban government as being a spy, or are you going to be given hell by the Americans for going down there and supporting what's going on in Cuba? It's almost like the journalist part of me wants to get involved and shoot and take pictures and really do my thing. But then I got clients that are with me that want to go home. And a friend of mine actually goes down there all the time, and he says that, when you get off an airplane, there's a walkway between the airplane and customs.
Hmm.
And supposedly they've put ICE agents on that pathway, which I believe is international land. It's not America. So what are they doing there? And what they're doing is Trump said that if you do tourism in Cuba, he's going to find you $215,000. So
What?
so these guys will come, is that you come off the plane, let's say two young girls who are down there for just for having fun, and they come off and they go, so where were you? And all, well, we were on the beach. Well, all of a sudden, that's tourism.
Huh?
They go pull them aside and they're screwed. So it makes it's so these things just keep happening as all the other stuff in our life keeps happening.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I remember, I don't know if it was when you were on one of our older programs, but I remember there being like, full on moratoriums about even visiting Cuba. Like no one could go, to Cuba. You couldn't fly into it directly from a U.S. airline. You had to fly in from like a Mexican airline. You had to,
bad,
fly to
well,
Mexico.
Well, that's the actually a myth, because back in 2012, I got a permit from the U.S. government, and in order for you to go, I had to assign my permit to you,
Okay.
and then you had to go under my umbrella. That
Right.
went on for about a year, and
Okay.
when we went down there, we went to Miami and got on charter flights into Havana. Or Santiago or wherever it flew into. And then the first time Trump was in there, he cut off all the airplanes except for Havana. I then started going just to Havana, and now American Airlines had just got on the plane and go in. I've never gone to Mexico. I've never gone to Canada and down, because if you go to Mexico and then go to Cuba, they stamp your passport. The U.S. Customs guy goes, "Hey, where did you where did you go?" And well, I went to Mexico, and the guy will say, "Well, it's stamped here, Cuba. Why did you go there? You didn't have permission." So
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
all in the past. It's now you go to Miami, get on an airplane, get your visa, and go. So
Cool. I'm glad it's a smoother process now. That
yeah.
definitely helps a lot. Cool, cool. Well, what do you have going on this time? You've got how many people lined up to come down to Cuba?
We've got six coming down, and there's a great camera store out of Chicago called Tamarkin Camera, and they're a Leica store. They only sell Leicas. So Dan Tamarkin is coming down on the trip, and a number of the people on the trip shoot Leica with Leica as I do myself. So it will be, pretty good cameras coming down on the trip, and it'll just be very informative. Usually, the response from my trips are, "I didn't realize that we were going to do this," and the big thing on the trip, you can sleep at home, because we do so much. So,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
Okay. Cool.
But
Cool.
those aren't the only places. I've tried, and I'm going to try again. Nepal and Bhutan,
Right.
incredible places to shoot. I used to go to on medical missions into Cambodia, into Jordan and Beirut and China and all those places, and I would have clients along with me, and it was an incredible eye opener, because we do it hardcore. I go on the workshop as if I'm doing the workshop myself. I'm as if I'm a participant. So I get just as much out of it as you would get out of it. So, and it makes a lot more fun and a lot more collaborative, instead of some guy walking around and taking a picture and said, "This is how you do it," and then moving on. Well, wait a second. We didn't get to take the picture. Oh, but I told you how to do it. Learn later. Go practice at home. No, we don't do that. So
I was looking at your website, Bruce, and I noticed obviously you have a ton of books out there that you've made over the years. And I want to talk a little about this. Obviously we have our own book specific podcast, and we've talked about your books. I remember specifically Street Moments, reading that one. And, I'm just curious, do you self-publish these or do you work with a publisher?
I self-publish because unfortunately the cost of getting with a publisher is rather high,
Yeah,
and you end up with a closet full of books that you have to push yourself in order to make your
right.
money back. So, Street Moments was one of my first books, and I have during COVID I produced a book called the Nurses of COVID-19, and I was actually, which is a great thing for people to do, is giving back. I was going to the nurses in the clapping in New York at 7 o'clock, and I photographed. The next day I went back with my small little printer. I made 20, 30 prints of the pictures I had done. And I walked up to the nurses and I said, "Who do you know these people?" And they just flipped out, you know. And they say, "Oh, sure, sure." Every day I came back with pictures, and over 14 weeks, I gave them 2,500 pictures, and they wallpapered the lunchroom with them so that the nurses could take them off the wall, and then we would put more up. And then the nurses union hired me to photograph for 14 weeks and then create a book. So we sold about 1,500 copies of that book, and I self-published that. And then I got another hospital in line, and we sold another 300 books photographing that hospital. We photographed everybody in the hospital. So off of me just going for the fun of it to take pictures of the nurses, created a job and two books. Um, I went to school in high school in Cornwall, Connecticut, to a school called Marvelwood, very small school. And the last 3 weeks of the my senior year, I had to do an independent study off campus. And I my family raised horses, and I happened to find an old 85-year-old blacksmith that lived just down the street from the school. And a friend of mine and I stayed in the cabin of our art teacher, who was one of my mentors and helped me out with the project. And I photographed and the lifestyle of this blacksmith. And that was 55 years ago. And I've got all the negatives, and I'm producing a book with the story of that from 55 years ago. So
Never too late.
never too late, never too late. But I
Yeah,
got to,
actually, I went on a trip to London. I did a 2 week trip all around United Kingdom, I should say, to include Edinburgh and Scotland and whatever. And I always thought I should turn this like my photos into a book. And
yeah.
I never did because life just, gets in the way. But I think the title of the book was tentatively going to be called like something like "Oh my God, my feet hurt" or something like that. Just because I did so much walking around the countryside. But, I just was curious again what kind of goes into your methodology when creating a book or, obviously these books are self-published, self-directed, right? So nobody's
Right.
necessarily telling you to make a book on Cuba. You're driven just to create and, people have bought them. So that's been successful for you.
Well, I probably, if you think about it, probably after 15 years of Cuba, I probably have 500,000 photographs of Cuba. And I
Yeah.
sat there and I go, you know what? I'm going to put a book together. And I put a 11 by 12 book, 265 page book on Cuba.
Yeah.
And the print place. Well, the one lucky thing that I've have is during COVID, I printed at this, who is a very good friend now's printing shop. So I go down there and I run the machines and I actually print the books myself. And they're really beautiful printing. And we work on getting jobs into the print shop and do things together. Um, but I produced that book and I'm now re-editing it and I'm going to print again because I've that was 6 years ago and I've
Sure.
shot so much more.
Right.
Um, so it's the kind of thing I would love one of these things maybe which I've done it at the print shop. I've done the Zoom at the print shop and actually shown people what it takes to put a book together. It's kind of putting the cart before the horse. You should go to the print shop before you decide to do a book because there are things that I learned like big time. Like, oops, I should have done this because now I gotta start all over again because it's not going to come out on the paper. you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
DPI and color and black and white. I mean, it's just amazing amount of stuff that printer will do. And that's what the online guys, if you send it off to Blurb or somebody like that,
Hmm.
whatever is on your PDF, you get back on a piece of paper. If the color's off, the color's off. If your name is spelt wrong, it's spelt wrong. It's whatever it is they do. In this shop, it's custom. We sit there and work with the client and it comes out beautiful. It's really nice.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Have I done the self-publishing through Blurb and a few others, and I found it to be a pretty easy path towards getting something that looks good. I haven't had any complaints about what I've gotten from them, and I'll help my son make his first book. He actually put together a book of comics that he had been writing on a character that he created, and so I helped him make his first book, which he got a few sales, you know.
Yeah.
So more than me, I've never sold a single book. But then again, most of my books have been like, hey, look at our family vacation to Korea or look at our family vacation to Hawaii. So I'm not like selling them or making them to be sold, because nobody's going to buy that.
Right.
Nobody wants
Right.
to buy my family album. But, it allows me to put out there for, anyone who might be crazy enough to want to do that. So I'm glad that those kind of platforms exist. But it sounds like the arrangement you have is a little bit higher level than that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I worked with him on one of his accounts and I saved him thousands of dollars just on shipping and all this stuff. And he printed 240 sheets of paper for one job for this client. And,
Wow.
that was a week and a half of printing.
Yeah.
So, me bringing in clients like that or working with clients, saving him big money allows me a lot of leeway on the other side. But to help him out also and let people know, that's where I was saying we've had Zooms on how to put the book together. And somebody brought their InDesign in, it was totally wrong and
Oh,
he manipulated it and gave her a book to walk out with. And boy, did she learn a lot. So, and it was really informative for everybody that did it. Unfortunately, a real book, a well put together book is $150 a piece. This thing where they're selling them for 19.95. They printed it over in China and they printed 5,000 of them. Well, that's where the bargain basement at Barnes and Noble comes in at
yeah.
$5 for the book. They didn't print that book for $5. Somebody's losing some big bucks on that.
Yeah, right.
So
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Cool, cool. Yeah. So again, I mean, you don't see any issues getting into Cuba this time in February, right? You think it's going to be smooth sailing?
we literally had a Zoom where we sat there and everybody that was going, we were kind of back and forth and one my guy in Havana said, hey, maybe not. My guy in Santiago said, hey, don't worry about it. Um, my guys down there are really good. I mean, 3 years ago, like I said, I was looking for liters, not gallons, liters of gas. And I'm in a car with four clients driving through the middle of Cuba. And that was bad. So I'm not sure how much worse it's going to be or could be. We pick casas that have solar panels or generators, and that type of stuff. So, but you think about it this way. If it would take 5 or 6 weeks of Zooms to tell you what I've done the last 55 years, from sitting on aircraft carriers with airplanes going over my head and all all this stuff that I never ever get to do again. I'll never get on an aircraft carrier. I've flown onto the aircraft carrier, kept the wire, sat in front of jets, never again. So, and the reason I did that was someone said, "Hey, do you know how to use this camera?" And I said, "Yes." Why? "Oh, because we're going on to an aircraft carrier tomorrow." Okay. I learned how to use the camera. I jumped on the airplane. Going to Cuba right now could be the last time to see Cuba as it is. It's almost the go go to Cuba before Cuba goes us. And it's almost like go to France before France goes us. You
Mhm.
know, if 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 you think where you're going is going to be like home, stay at home. Incidental Tourist. It's a movie. Everybody should watch that movie.
Yeah,
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And it tells you exactly if I'm going to go to France, I'm going to work on trying to figure out how to talk my way through because I don't know French. I'm not
right.
going to give them a hard time because they don't know English.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
because that's the fun of it. That's the incredible fun of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what, but I guess my biggest problem that I think of is what our dear president's going to do. And as an American, we're allowed to go any place we want. It might be stupid to go to certain places, but if we want
Mhm.
to go there, it's our problem, not their problem.
That's right.
Um, so
Except for North Korea.
North Korea, right? Well,
Can't go to
the
North Korea.
North Korea has a few things to say about going in. So, you
You know,
know,
yeah, let me ask you this, Bruce. You've obviously been going to Cuba for, gosh, more than almost 2 decades now. And, I'm curious, when you go to the same place over and over again, how do you kind of find new things to cover? Or do you have any challenges finding new things or ways to cover the country? Or do you find it to be such a rich and diverse habitat that there's just always something every time you go?
I always find something new every time I go. One of the things I do, and everybody will get there on Friday, and I'll sit everybody down. The first half day, I'll let them go out and take as many pictures as they want, and they'll burn up two or three cards on cars, and then I'll say, "Okay, guys, let's sit and take some pic. Now let's create some images." And I will tell them, pick something, and it could be red. So as you look for red to take for your project, you're going to see everything else around it, right? So that's what I kind of do. One trip I went down and I got two little flags, two little Cuban flags, and I gave them to people. And I probably did 190 portraits with the flags. So that was my project that time. And so everywhere I went, I had something new to do. So yes, but it is challenging. But I've been to Bangladesh. I've been to Bangladesh 3 or 4 times, and it can get challenging there. And I would go into the operating rooms and then go out into the neighborhoods because I had taken enough pictures of the operating rooms. So it's not just Cuba.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool, cool. So besides that and the books and everything else, have you thought about or considered going to any of these hotspots? Like, for instance, um, our buddy Zach just came back from Minneapolis. He'll probably be jumping on, not tonight, but we'll probably be maybe recording a special segment either as part of the show or part of another separate thing, talking about his time over there with ICE. Does that kind of stuff intrigue you? You ever thought about maybe hopping on a plane or getting driving over to some hotspot to get some, potentially award-winning news photography?
Well, I don't have the I could research how to do it. I don't have the availability to get it out onto the wire. Um, so I would probably work on New York before I went to Minneapolis, just to because there's I was in the subway yesterday and I could hear up above the street. We were going through Times Square. I literally could hear the protest upstairs.
Yeah.
Uh, and unfortunately, I was on my way someplace else, or I would have gone up and dealt with New York.
Hmm.
I think New York is going to be a real hot spot. So if I can get involved with it, I'll do it here in New York.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, great, great. You have a gallery opening coming up, right? You're going to be presenting
Yep.
your work. Talk to me a little bit about what you went into the preparation for this gallery showcase.
So in Catskill, New York, I picked up a house that had a two-car garage actually in the back, and you have to go through this topiary garden into it. So it's a really kind of a neat place in the town of Catskill, and painted the walls up, and it's a gallery, and the basement of the house is where all my frames are and everything else. And then in the town of Catskill is Joust Cafe, where I've had a couple big shows. I've got another show coming up in Athens, New York, where I'll
Wow.
do my street moments in Athens. And then this summer, we're gonna do a big Cuban show in Joust Cafe on the main street of Catskill. And part of it will be in my studio, and part of it will be at this cafe. I did a big show last year in the cafe, and it was 50 images, but some images were very large. So it was a lot of wall space. And I tell you, try to put a show together sometime. I don't care if it's 10 pictures or 500 pictures. It takes a lot of work and a lot of thought,
Yeah,
even more than putting a book together.
I believe
So
you.
and then you hope that people will come.
I know, right? Hope people will buy the book.
Or the
You.
pictures off the wall. So
Oh, they can buy the pictures off the wall. That's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. Well,
I had
that's
one picture sold like that back when I was back, earlier in my career. Yeah, I put it up at for sale someplace and first ever picture sold, print sold. So who knows? Maybe that was my calling. I've always considered doing the art show tent photo booth type work, like seeing what that would be like.
Chicago. Chicago is very big on that.
Okay.
New York doesn't have any of that because there's no space to do it.
Yeah.
But in Chicago, big time. I got two photographers that came to Cuba with me. They're there all the time.
Wow.
He literally travels the United States doing so. If you can get involved in those art shows, you gotta you gotta research it and make sure you got
Right.
the stuff to sell because it
Yes.
is a cost. You got to buy the
Right.
booth,
Right.
the tent, and make the prints and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd have to obviously, cull my collection down to what is not only high quality, but also what might sell, right?
Right.
So, I don't see big market for the type of photography I have in my collection, which is mostly like photojournalism style stuff. I'm sure some of that would be attractive to the average customer at these type of shows and festivals, but I think most of the time they're looking for like pretty pictures they can hang on their wall, sunsets and landscapes and animals and things like that. So I'd have to like really kind of zero in my collection onto what would potentially sell at these festivals, and then obviously research the festival market and
Right.
see what has sold in the past because it wouldn't make sense for me to go through all that work and effort and have a bunch of prints I can't sell because you got to pay for your space to
Exactly.
be there,
And you got to pay for the prints.
and you got to pay for to
And
get there.
and you have to get there and you have to pay for the mats. So, but what you could do is look back in the history of your photography
Right.
and pull some of the historical moments. That could be a good selling point.
Mm,
A friend of
perhaps.
mine who used to share darkroom space with me, he photographed the signing of the Bill of Rights. He was one of the three photographers in the Capitol with
Wow.
Johnson signing, and absolutely beautiful prints. And that was a big selling item, and
Hmm.
it was a very historical moment. So
Yeah.
think that as opposed to a bunch of people throwing rocks at the whatever they're protesting, which not many people will do. And then I have the problem with my street moments. I have a hard time selling, except I had a show one time at a friend's apartment, and the guy came in and bought 10 pieces,
Wow.
at $1,000 a piece. So it was a good night. Um, so, it's just a matter of timing. And unfortunately, the contemporary photography and contemporary art in the world today is not the greatest. Even though there's an awful lot of money being made on the stock market, it's not being translated into the art field at all.
No.
They're not investing in art like they used to,
No.
unless
Why
you're
should they,
answering.
right? When
Right.
you can go into an AI prompt and prompt AI to make whatever artwork you want,
Yep.
why pay anyone for artwork? And it's
Yeah.
like, if you're okay with whatever it produces, then hey, I mean, it's really about like the idea of things and like people's bars changing based on what is cheaper, right? So, you know, music at its height, it's like the crisp warmness of a record, and then okay, now we're going digital, and it's like high quality waves, and then oh, now we can make them into MP3s, and they're compressed format, but they sound good enough, right? So again, it's I think people's willingness to accept that lower quality, or I would say that AI quality because it's free essentially to create, and then you just have to print it, right? So
Yeah.
why pay for an artist to do what you can have AI generate, you know? And while there obviously is a contingent of customers right now who still appreciate, you know, man-made art, 10, 20 years from now, when you have the current generation of youth who grew up with it, are they going to feel that same way? Or are they going to see like, why bother? Why
Right.
bother buying a record? Why bother buying a tape or a CD when I can just download what I want? Why bother paying for an artist or a photographer to create when like headshots, the headshot market, I have to imagine has been, I'm not do headshots, so I don't want to know firsthand, but I have to
Here,
imagine it's been decimated.
let me do my headshot. Oh, there we go.
Well, it's not just you take a photo with your phone, it's you give it to an AI and it creates a nice professional, business type headshot or whatever with you in a suit. So if you're looking for a photo like that, the AI can just take your photo and make you wear whatever you want and put you in a nice business environment or something like that. So and I played around with those tools. And so, again, corporate headshots and things like that, you probably wouldn't see a need for to hire a photographer, but maybe something more like authentic or I would say creative. If you're doing something, if you're a film person, actor type, you'd want that, handheld creative touch. But, still, we've talked about sort of the business and photojournalism as a business, and it still exists, right? I've always
Oh
been
yeah.
surprised talking to people who teach or help promote photojournalism. It's still out there. It still exists. People still do it. and it's not a career field for many. It's not a career field for the older generations, but it's definitely still something that you see young people getting into and doing for a bit before they go on to do something else. But there is a
Well,
contingent of people who want the work, and there's a contingent of people who are willing to do the work. So there's, work to be had.
I find it very interesting. People say, how do you get that person to take that picture, to allow you to take the picture? And I shoot with the Leica rangefinder, right? So
Yeah,
it's a little small camera like this. It captures incredible data, okay?
sure.
Black and white film or digital. But I'll have that sitting on in my camera bag, and the camera that I will have in my hand is the Canon with the longer lens because it makes people think that I'm a journalist, that I'm a photographer, not just a tourist with a camera.
Hmm.
And they treat me differently. And I'm able to get the shots. I'm able to get through a police line. I'm able to be left alone because I'm, quote, the press, as opposed to with the rangefinder, I'm just the tourist. So what I carry in my camera bag is very, very important. Certain times I'll walk around with my rangefinder because I want to act like a tourist so that I can get those pictures. But in a protest or in a journalistic situation that they have to take me for something else, I'll use a different camera.
Yeah.
And I've done it on the streets in New York where it can be hardcore and they just absolutely leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I'm able to take the pictures and I just act like the journalist, even if I don't care about whatever's going on, but I want to take the pic. I'm able to step right in, take the pictures, and step out where I see other people being moved away or treated as a just a tourist. So the equipment that you're carrying is very important.
100%, 100%. All right, Bruce. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us about all the amazing adventures that are going on. Go ahead and hype up that website one more time.
So it's the my workshops is cameraodysseys.com and my gallery is hillstreetgallery.com and my regular website where you can find all this is brucebyers.com. As I always say, B as in boy, Yers. It's not
There you
Myers,
go.
it's Byers.
That's right. Oh man. Yeah, I see you have the Hill Street Gallery Catskill portion of your website, but then you have your own website for that as well.
Right. So what I'm doing right now is uh, Core which is a platform for selling work. I'm gonna move my store to that and keep my website so I can talk about my work and show stuff, and then send you off to the store to buy the images. And right now, my store is involved in my website, and it gets kind of complicated.
Yeah,
Um,
I bet.
I like to be able to put stuff up and take it down whenever I want, or to show you new things, or to show you a new show, or that type of thing. And Bruce Byers in Instagram, Hill Street Gallery, Catskill for Instagram.
Mhm.
Love for people to follow me.
Yeah,
I
awesome, man.
I always find it wonderful that I've had Bruce Byers for Instagram for now, well, I'd say almost 20 years,
Wow.
and I probably have 1,400 followers. I have
Hey,
Hill
I've
Street
had I've had a
Gallery.
YouTube
Cat,
account for 20 years as well, and I think I have about like maybe like a couple hundred subscribers. So, you know,
yeah,
it's not about when you get
yeah,
in, it's about what you do with the platform when you're on it, you know.
Right. I know. I
But
know. It's so funny. Everybody thinks you have to have millions of followers, but you know, no, it's always fun.
dude. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us again, Bruce. Always appreciate it. Always enjoy talking with you. Thank you again so much for your time. Good luck in Cuba. Stay safe out there, and hopefully you can get to the country without too much issue. All right.
Well,
Well, for Bruce
hopefully,
Byer,
hopefully there's a country to come back to.
yeah, either the country will be gone or it'll be part of the United States, and then there'll be no
Right.
issues getting there and back. The
Right.
Cubans will all be U.S. citizens.
Right.
Anyways, all right. For Bruce Byers, I'm David Murphy. This has been Around the Lens Roundtable Discussions, and we'll see you all next week. Bye, everybody.